Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today from Breitbart News, Pentagon correspondent there, Christina Wong, will join us in the 4 o'clock hour. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning, and you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more.
That's an oldie, but a goodie, as the President of the United States undertakes a very, very busy weekend. Vince, I thought you were supposed to have the weekend off. Not if you're the President of the United States. Not if you are the officials who are working for the President of the United States and fulfilling the vision of the American voter now quite aggressively in just over 2 weeks of the Trump presidency. And if you are wondering, where are we winning, Vince? Where are we winning? Well, how about in Venezuela, where we just got 6 more American hostages released, flown back to the United States by Rick Grenell, working for the President of the United States going into the weekend? How about in Colombia, where that government was refusing to take back their illegal aliens until President Trump threatened them with tariffs, and all of a sudden they're sending their own presidential plane to pick up their own people to bring them back to Colombia? How about in Panama? The Panama Canal, which unfortunately has become dominated by Chinese interests. Senator Marco Rubio paying a visit to Panama this weekend and getting them to successfully turn around those contracts, ending the relationship with the Chinese in a meaningful way. That's a very big deal. What about in Mexico, where the President of the United States imposed tariffs on a number of countries this weekend, 25% on Mexico, 25% on Canada, and an additional 10% on China. He's not going easy on China. We already have massive tariffs on China. An additional 10% on China. What did Mexico do in response? Well, the news today, Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, announcing that she is deploying 10,000 of her troops to our southern border to secure it. Who's paying for the border security? I believe that's Mexico. I think Mexico's paying for the wall, as President Trump is able to use that and then put a month delay now on imposing those tariffs on Mexico while they try to resolve all the other details out. Canada, you should probably pay attention to how this is done. China, for that matter, too. And so this is big. This is a series of big things that have occurred very quickly, all to the benefit of the American people. Now, what else is happening this weekend? This is the one that I've just been tickled to death by. USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, not to be confused with a real charity of any kind, just had its doors locked, and people are told, wait a minute, we're auditing what you're up to. This is an agency with somewhere in the vicinity of $50 billion a year in annual spending. Flies under the radar for the average American. Most people not very attuned to what this agency is doing. And yet Elon Musk and DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, have put USAID directly in their sights this weekend. And obviously previously to this weekend. And in giving it a hard look, said, wait a second, there's a lot of out-of-control spending going on here, a lot of unaccountable spending going on here. What are you spending all of this American taxpayer money on? So over the weekend, DOGE officials, this would be people who are working for President Trump and by extension, the American voter, well, they went over on a Saturday to USAID. They paid a little visit. And this is causing one of the biggest panics in Washington you've ever seen. And it's all based on an agency that has flown completely under the radar in the eyes of the American people. Here's where we begin. The New York Times this weekend. Top security officials at aid agency put on leave after denying access to Musk team. Even the headline lies, as if it's an aid agency. The top 2 security officials at the U.S. Agency for International Development were put on administrative leave on Saturday night after refusing to give representatives of Elon Musk access to internal systems, according to 3 U.S. officials with knowledge of the matter. And the agency's chief of staff, Matt Hobson, a Trump administration political appointee, who had started his job just days ago, has resigned, 2 of the officials said. the employees working for Mr. Musk's task force, who clashed with John Voorhees, USAID's director of security, and his deputy, Brian McGill, were seeking to enter a secure area of the agency's offices to get at classified material. Two U.S. officials with knowledge of the incident said. Pause. Why does an agency that's supposedly dedicated to humanitarian relief even have a classified section? Why would we have classified information at this noble agency that's designed to give crippled children wheelchairs and wheelchair ramps and access to clean water? Why would we have a classified division at USAID? What? What are they doing that's so secret? What could they possibly be doing? It's not exactly clear what exchange took place between them, Mr. Voorhees and Mr. McGill, who could not immediately be reached for comment. Mr. Hobson also could not be immediately reached. Mr. Voorhees and his deputy are the latest senior officials at the agency to be put on administrative leave. Last week, Trump administration appointees suspended about 60 senior officials and issued stop work orders that led to the firing of hundreds of contractors. There has been talk among current and former agency employees and lawmakers that USAID, which receives its funding from Congress, could be subsumed within the State Department in a drastically reduced form as President Trump continues to slash foreign aid. Just envision this. So you have men and women working on behalf of President Trump, that is, on behalf of the American voter. They go to a U.S. government agency this weekend in order to audit its activities, just to see what they're up to take a look, to rifle through the paperwork, as is the right of the President of the United States. And I don't care what party you voted for. You should absolutely be on the side of the American people get to dictate the behavior of their government and get to have a look at how the government's been using your money that's coming from your paycheck. You have every right to know. So President Trump sends a team over, and they're stopped at the door. You're not allowed in. And what happens? These guys are placed, rightfully so, on administrative leave. You're blocking the President of the United States from having access to this information? Not for long. They've been placed on administrative leave. The left is freaking out about this. Why? Why are they so panicked? What is driving them so crazy? Did we find your piggy bank? Did we find the source of your corruption? One of the ways in which you've been enriching yourself, your friends, your donors? I think so. I think we're onto something here. And so the panic is setting in. The media are mounting defenses for government secrecy right now. Have you been following legacy media in the last 72 hours as a result of all of this? They're going crazy about this. And they're not going crazy because the government is being held accountable, meaning they're not going crazy in order to hold the government to account. That's not why they're going crazy. They're going crazy to defend secrecy. They're going crazy to defend an out-of-control agency with little accountability to the American people. That's what they're going crazy for. Here's President Trump last night talking about USAID and what it's been up to.
It's been run by a bunch of radical lunatics, and we're getting them out. USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
This morning, President Trump locked the doors on the agency, locked them. U.S. Agency for International Development employees received an email early today instructing them to stay out of the agency's Washington headquarters. As this is the New York Post reporting, as tech billionaire Elon Musk claimed President Trump has given him the okay to shut it down for good. Staff were ordered at the direction of agency leadership to, quote, work remotely, except for personnel with essential on-site and building maintenance functions individually contracted by senior leadership. An agency-wide email reviewed by the Post shows. Quote, further guidance will be forthcoming. The missive appears to have been drafted by Gavin Kleiger, an engineer at Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, which has been charged with trimming federal spending from the agency's roughly $40 billion budget. It's higher than that. As well as other executive branch departments. Senator Marco Rubio is still traveling, trying to create some good outcomes for the United States all through South America right now. He was asked by the press today about this. What's going on with USAID? Here's what he said.
Look, I mean, my frustration with USAID goes back to my time in Congress. It's a completely unresponsive agency. It's supposed to respond to policy directives of the State Department, and it refuses to do so. So the functions of USAID, there are a lot of functions of USAID that are going to continue, that are going to be part of American foreign policy, but it has to be aligned with American foreign policy. I said very clearly during my confirmation hearing that every dollar we spend and every program we fund, that will be aligned with the national interest of the United States. And USAID has a history of sort of ignoring that and deciding that there's somehow a global charity separate from the national interest. These are taxpayer dollars.
These are taxpayer dollars. So we have an entire agency who couldn't give a hoot about what the American voter thinks and what our priorities are. Well, then you shouldn't be an agency. You shouldn't exist. In fact, there should be criminal investigations of that. You're not responsive to the American voter? The executive branch is entirely responsive to the American voter. Apparently not. Marco Rubio saying that he's Secretary Rubio now, saying he's concerned that they refuse to even answer simple questions. Now, remember, he's the Secretary of State, and he can't get answers from a federal government agency.
And so I'm very troubled by these reports that they've been unwilling to cooperate with people who are asking simple questions about what does this program do, who gets the money, who are our contractors, who's funded. And that sort of level of insubordination makes it impossible to conduct the sort of mature and serious review that I think foreign aid writ large should have. We're spending taxpayer money here. These are not donor dollars. These are taxpayer dollars. And we owe the American people the assurances that every dollar we are spending abroad is being spent on something that furthers our national interest. And so far, a lot of the people that work at USAID have just simply refused to cooperate.
They've refused to cooperate. They've refused to cooperate with the people who pay them? Well, then good. You can leave. You're fired. Marco Rubio said today he's the now acting director of USAID, in addition to being Secretary of State.
Are you currently in charge of USAID? Or are you
I'm the acting director of USAID. I've delegated that authority to someone, but I stay in touch with him.
Yeah, maybe now we can get a few answers. Democrats are panicking. Democrat lawmakers are staging their most visible, aggressive, hysterical protest yet of the Trump era. Of the Trump 47 era. There's Senator Andy Kim from New Jersey in front of USAID today.
I talked to the security guard just in there. He said he has been given specific orders to prevent employees of USAID from entering the building today. And I just find that to be absolutely ridiculous. You know, this is no way to govern. This is no way to treat public servants. And this is no way for us to conduct our foreign policy as a country. Man, he gets really exercised over holding an agency that nobody ever talks about accountable. Here's Ilhan Omar, famously associated with crazy causes.
It is really, really a sad day in America. We are witnessing a constitutional crisis.
The constitutional crisis is when you get to hold the government accountable.
Talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one.
Yes, because dictators try and shrink the government.
And here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like.
Well, then I'm all in. I'm so excited for this dictatorship. It's great. It's a very benevolent dictatorship. It's a dictatorship of the people. Here's Jamie Raskin today, Cosmo Kramer himself.
Elon Musk, you didn't create USAID. The United States Congress did for
You didn't build that?
the American people.
For the American people.
And just like Elon Musk
Oh, really? How has it helped?
did not create USAID, he doesn't have the power to destroy it. And who's going to stop him? We are. We're going to stop him.
There's Jamie Raskin promising an insurrection.
Elon Musk, you may have illegally seized power over the financial payment systems of the United States Department of Treasury, but you don't control the money of the American people. The United States Congress does that.
Nothing ticks a Democrat off more than you taking a look at how they're spending your money. Nothing. He's furious right now that you're even assessing what kind of checks he's trying to cash. How dare you? Jerry Connolly, the man who should not be in the Congress, saying today, we're here to save lives.
We're here today not only to fight for federal employees who dedicate themselves every day to a humanitarian task.
Oh, my God.
We are here to save lives because that is what AID does.
Oh, does it? So is that what USAID was doing when they were funding EcoHealth Alliance, you know, the group that seems to be responsible for starting the COVID pandemic and killing millions of people on planet Earth? Was that a saving lives exercise? I don't think so. I've got a lot more to talk to you about, including what USAID has been spending all this money on. I don't think you're going to be happy. Oh, man, Democrats are panicked that a virtually unknown agency, USAID, is receiving even a little bit of scrutiny about how it spends 50 million U.S. taxpayer dollars every single year. Here's Jim McGovern today.
To all the employees at USAID, thank you, thank you, thank you. You keep America safe, and you help people all around the world. And I want to apologize. I want to say I'm sorry that you have to put up with this offensive bullshit coming out of this White House.
Woo! Everyone's screaming out in front of the USAID. Let's see here. Willie calling in from Culpeper, now line 3. Hello, Willie. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Willie. Stand by. We're almost there. I can see it happening. Anna's working on the board right now. All right, there's Willie in Culpeper. Hello, Willie.
Thank you, Vince, for taking my call. Great show. Listen, this agency was started by executive order. President Kennedy, I'm told.
Yes.
1961.
Yes, that's exactly right.
I voted for, but I didn't vote for it. Yeah, and they have no accountability. They've been taken over by a bunch of lefties that are promoting gender transformation funding and all that sort of stuff around the world. The good things that it does good things, can be put under different agencies. Treasury Department, probably Department of State.
Yes, and that's in fact what Senator Marco Rubio was saying today, that this is, he's kind of running the show now. He's the acting administrator over at USAID, and that he should be able to exert control over this. It makes perfect sense to normal people, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Yeah, and now but it is completely out of control and virtually unaccountable, I guess, until this weekend. Hey,
unaccountable, and each year more and more money from our Congress.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you, Willie. No, that's excellent points all around. All right, hey, more in a moment. More of your phone calls coming up. We're going to get into more details about the way that this $50 billion agency has been blowing through your cash each year. And has it made the world a safer place? Has it improved everything? No, actually, everything's become a lot more volatile, thanks in no small part to this sleeper agency. Stay with us. Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news coming up. Christina Wong from Breitbart News talks to us about everything going on at the Pentagon. You see some of the legacy news outlets lost their permanent office space. Turns out it wasn't so permanent. You can join us. 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. The media are very upset that USAID is getting some scrutiny now from the Trump people.
Back to USAID, many staffers have lost access to their email and other accounts, and the agency's website was taken down. Critics are demanding to know why a group in charge of government efficiency needs to be conducting this apparent takeover of an agency.
Critics want to know why a group dedicated to government efficiency is scrutinizing the government. Who are these critics that you're talking to? Who could they possibly be? Well, a whole lot of Democrat members of Congress, for one. They're all out whining today. I've never seen them so exercised. They're going crazy. Chuck Schumer's on the verge of threatening lives again. They are very intensely trying to defend USAID from scrutiny. Let's see. Here's Representative John Osuski from Maryland, who is, he's out there. He's white knighting for this agency.
I know this. USAID is an independent agency by law, and changing that law, as has been said, requires an act of Congress. This is just another unlawful and intentional step until an absolute executive abuse of power.
President Trump said today that everything Elon Musk is doing on his behalf is being done on his behalf. He's happy with how things are going right now. And he's like, yeah, he only can cut or do what I give him permission to do. And he's perfectly thrilled with Elon Musk tackling all of this. And as, part of this, one of the news headlines I saw this weekend is like, they don't even have security clearances to go into the classified stuff at USAID, which once again begs the question, why is there classified stuff at USAID? And in reality, apparently the team does have all the clearances they need. They do. They have all the clearances they need. In fact, I saw it was Stephen Miller's wife. This is not why she's being noted, but I just think that's notable. Stephen Miller's a great American working for President Trump. Katie Miller, his wife, also working for President Trump. She's the spokeswoman for DOGE. And she said the following this weekend on X, quote, no classified material was accessed without proper security clearances. So the team that's doing this, they've got all the requisite clearances. It's driving the left crazy. They can't even stand it. Speaking of X and getting DOGE under control, Senator Joni Ernst has been, and she's been out there. She's been pretty good on trying to cut waste in government, and she's working right there with DOGE to try and get control of our out of control federal government. She said in an X space this weekend with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, in case you're wondering, he was on the X space too. It was one big happy family all talking to each other. She said that she's been trying to get to the bottom of spending at USAID, and they have been threatening her.
I know, Elon, you have been on USAID. You have really, and so
That's the hornet's nest for sure.
this was another one of my efforts.
Yes.
And this began years ago when we were trying to figure out what they were doing with our American taxpayer dollars that were going to support humanitarian efforts in Ukraine. So I wanted to know exactly how those dollars were being spent. And
Right.
not
A
just in
reasonable request.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I shared this with you earlier, Elon, just privately, but we got all kinds of threats from USAID because I was trying to exercise my oversight capacity in Congress. So
I mean,
they,
that's just shocking. I mean, it's
oh,
how I mean, honestly, it's outrageous.
It's shocking and it's outrageous. It's shocking and it's outrageous. Now, did you hear what she was saying about Ukraine? They were trying to audit humanitarian spending done by USAID in Ukraine. What kind of spending has USAID been doing in Ukraine? Well, they've been spending a lot of money this entire century in that country. And in fact, if you go back a little bit, well, let me actually, hold up. There's a caller who wants to make a point, and I want to let him do it first. Here's Paul in Alexandria, line 1. Paul, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello.
Good afternoon. Yeah, if you're wondering about the classified information, it's been a pretty open secret for a while that USAID is a CIA front. It's one of the mechanisms that we use to overthrow other people's governments.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I can rather imagine that there are a lot of people rather disturbed about Trump shedding light on what's been going on in there.
Yes, and sending people with all of the requisite security clearances in to rifle through their closets right now, and all of a sudden just a full-blown panic out of institutional Washington, Paul.
No, and of course, the president, by definition, has complete classification authority. He can give anybody any clearances he wants.
Yeah. All right. I'm glad you brought this up, Paul, because this is the next point I wanted to get to. All right. So Paul brings up this point, which people talk about when you talk about USAID. To the extent that people know about it, they do. They say what Paul said, which is it's a CIA front. It's used for covert operations. It's meant to be a humanitarian appearing organization, but meanwhile, it's achieving all sorts of secret objectives for the CIA. Now, here is President Trump's HHS nominee, RFK Jr. He did an interview some time ago with Tucker Carlson, and he was talking about Ukraine specifically. You heard Joni Ernst talk about it a moment ago. But what was the big event that occurred in 2014 in Ukraine? There's two huge events that happened in 2014. In February of that year, you get what's called the Maidan Revolution, where there's a coup d'etat to overthrow the existing government of Ukraine. That government was a lot closer to Vladimir Putin. It was much more Russian-oriented, that government. And in 2014, in February of 2014, it gets overthrown, and in its place is all of a sudden a much more American-friendly government. Also, in March of 2014, the next month, is when Vladimir Putin annexed Crimea. So there's a revolution in Ukraine in February. By March, Putin rushes into Ukraine, annexes Crimea in the midst of all of this chaos. And then it wouldn't be until years later, under Joe Biden, that Vladimir Putin once again invades Ukraine. And, of course, we've seen all of the chaos that's ensued since then and the millions of lives that have been lost since then. So here's RFK talking about USAID and what he says is its role in that 2014 revolution.
2014, there are riots it's called the Maidan Rebellion in Ukraine, which we're not told that we are financing those riots. The newspapers never told us, our government never told us. USAID, which is a CIA front, put $5 billion into funding those riots. Those riots lead to a coup d'etat against the first democratically elected government of the Ukraine. It was a government that refused to choose sides and to say, we're going to be on the side of the West. So we wanted them out. A month before that government is overthrown, Victoria Nuland, who's the part of the centerpiece of the neocon ideology and who is now a high-level official in the State Department, has a secret call with the U.S. ambassador, which is tape recorded and is now public, which anybody can go and look up, where she is picking the new cabinet for Ukraine, which is a U.S. Western cabinet. So they're picking the new government a month before the old government is overthrown.
Is that how democracy when Victoria Nuland picks your government?
Well, that's the point. Is USAID doesn't really do, and the CIA don't do democracy. The CIA has overthrown, I think, 83 governments between 1947 and 1997. That's a third of the governments on Earth, and most of them were democracies. Oh, it doesn't do democracy.
All right. So that's RFK talking about what USAID was involved in. Additionally, that phone call he referred to involving Victoria Nuland, the Assistant Secretary of the State Department, where she's talking with a colleague about who do we install as the new leadership.
I don't think Cleach should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
In terms of him not going into the government, just let him sort of stay out and do his political homework and stuff. I'm just thinking in terms of sort of the process moving ahead, we want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tony Book and his guys. And, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, what he needs is Cleach and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week. I just think Cleach going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
All right, so there they are. So USAID helps foment a revolution in 2014. In the wake of that, they're plotting who do they place in there to run the government. So, these are all just pieces of the puzzle. And you're watching Washington panic today that we're going through their laundry, that we're taking a look. Ukraine, not the only thing that USAID had a hand in of immense concern. Additionally, USAID has been a funder of the EcoHealth Alliance, of the very same organization which is believed to have been the start of the COVID pandemic. Remember, Dr. Fauci giving money to the EcoHealth Alliance, they're giving money to the lab in Wuhan, China, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where they're cooking up viruses that are meant to be more infectious and more deadly to human beings. Now, ostensibly, they claim that the research was being done in order to prevent the outbreak of a pandemic. But we all know now that that is actually the most likely vector for the pandemic being started in the first place. the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The EcoHealth Alliance was also funded by USAID. Here's Rand Paul, a little bit of a flashback for you, asking a couple years ago Samantha Power, who was the administrator for USAID, about the extent that we've been funding coronavirus research in Wuhan using USAID.
Ms. Powers, did USAID fund coronavirus research in Wuhan, China?
We did not fund gain-of-function research,
That's not the
as
question.
you know.
What a squirrely little deceitful answer. You hear that? We did not fund gain of function. That's not what he asked you. He asked you, are we funding coronavirus research?
We did not fund gain-of-function research,
That's not the
as
question.
you know.
The question is, did you fund coronavirus research in Wuhan, China?
Before my time, there was the PREDICT program with which you're familiar, which ended in China in 2019.
This is a $200 million program, and the GAO has also identified that some of these grants went directly to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where there is a suspicion that the lab leak began the pandemic. Has USAID awarded funds to the Academy of Military Medical Sciences in China?
Not to my knowledge, but I'd have to get
I think the answer is once again yes.
I think the answer, said a sitting United States senator, is once again yes. You heard her refer to the so-called PREDICT program. That's the program that was funneling money into Wuhan. You heard her just admit. That program was ended by the Trump administration in 2020 when President Trump and company became aware of all of the money that it was dumping there. Guess what happened after that? USAID in 2021, who was president then? Oh, that's right, Biden. Biden became president, and the USAID reverted to form. They relaunched this program, no longer called PREDICT. Instead, it was called Deep VZN, I guess some sort of play on Deep Vision. Began in 2021. Last year, 2023, 2 years into the existence of this new program, it was shuttered. The Biden administration closed it down after opening it up in 2021. And this program was designed to study up to 12. They had found thousands and thousands of potential new viruses. New viruses. They were sequencing genomes, trying to find dangerous viruses to humanity. But it turns out in the process, publishing all this data on these dangerous genomes and mapping out genomes, somebody in the government had the good sense to realize, wait a second, we are cooking up recipes for deadly viruses that some sort of terrorist can use against the planet. Maybe this is a bad idea. And so they shuttered it. They shuttered it again. But that was in 2023. They finally closed this thing down. But this is what USAID is involved in. How is this helping people? How is this $50 billion in spending actually doing anything for any humanitarian cause? All the time. How many times have we seen stories where the government is investigating viruses and then there's lab leaks? There's all sorts of lab leaks that are just running roughshod over the world. And they're government operations. Anything from COVID to Lyme's disease to anthrax being cooked up in a government lab. How many times do we have to have these events before we say, man, this is a really bad use of American taxpayer dollars? All we're doing is killing people. We're making them sick. And we have just begun to scratch the surface. You want to know more about this program? I've got some advice for DOGE. I'll tell them. They probably know, but I'll share it with you in a moment.
The first term, though, USAID was something that you liked in some respects.
I love the concept of it.
That's the program.
Sure. I love the concept, but they turned out to be radical left lunatics. And the concept of it is good, but it's all about the people.
USAID, the concept of it is good, but it's all about the people. They turned out to be radical left lunatics. Yes, they did. We'll dive more into that coming up. Let us see here. I've got James in Pensacola, line 4. Hello, James. You're on the Vince Colonnese Show.
Hey, Vince. How are you?
Good, James.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Rupert the Monkey Boy over at Treasury is also linked to this thing.
Rupert the Monkey Boy?
Huh?
Who's that, Rupert the Monkey Boy? Who is that?
He just resigned as the Secretary of the Treasury.
The Treasury Secretary?
his fingerprints are all over this. He's the guy who's writing the checks, I believe. And, USA has a long, dirty history with the CIA, and they have no business with a $300 million annual tally to their favor. I mean, I'm really happy with what Trump's doing, and I am a government employee, and I'll tell you right now, if I have to resign my job, more power to Trump, because if it's good for the country, then I'm all for it.
Well, that's the spirit. So, all right, hey James, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, there's this is a lack of accountability. That's the issue here. I'm still not sure who Rupert the Monkey Boy is. I knew Janet Yellen was the Treasury Secretary, and now Scott Besson's the new one. I'll keep doing the math on the break. Maybe I missed something. 3:59.